But it's pretty simple stuff. Basically, I screwed this in, attached the ground here. Here's my little special lead that I have for the ballast resistor. Alright guys, this is episode 2 of our fuel pump install. Today we're going to be doing the electrical and some of the other remaining cleanup on the install. This is assuming that you've already watched part 1 and you have the wire already in the engine bay. We're also going to cover making a cover for your mechanical fuel pump so that you don't have that crowding your engine bay. For the installs that I've done thus far, I've used one of these cheap Amazon relay boxes. They're very affordable and they hold a variety of relays and fuses in one neat little package, like so. And the big advantage of something like this is that you can have, for example, a fuel pump relay and a fan relay, as I did an electric fan install in here. You could have, you know, an AC relay. You could also add a headlight relay, which, being as the Valiant is a little bit older, I don't want to muck around with the engine bay with this, which is very modern looking and doesn't look original to the car. So I'm going to go for something a little bit more discreet. To top it off, at this point in the time, I'm not going to do an electric fan install in the Valiant. I just don't know if the alternator is up to the task, and so I might look into that more later, but it might require upgrading the alternator. So it's just going to be a single relay for the fuel pump, easy install. I have this pre-made harness kicking around from an electric fan kit that I bought. I'm going to be using it just for simplicity, and it already has a fuse setup, but really you can do the same thing with just buying some generic pin holders from like a Canadian Tire or something, and just plugging them straight onto a relay. You don't particularly need a pre-made harness, but it just makes the installation a bit faster for me. We're going to be using a 5-pin relay, which is a very, well, in this case a 4-pin, but it's the same. We're going to be using a 5-pin or 4-pin relay because those are very cheap, affordable, and common. And knockoffs are generally very cheap on Amazon, and if they break, you could just keep an extra one in your glove box. This lower pin will receive power from the alternator, or in our case the starter, which is on the same side of the engine bay. It'll supply power to this top pin, which is for the fuel pump, and then this is the positive signal and the negative signal pins. So these will run, this one will be, in our case, connected to the ignition signal, which we'll get from the ballast resistor, and then this one will just be grounded just so that the signal can pass through. Alright guys, I'm here in the engine bay of the Valiant. Number one thing is first just disconnect the battery, which I've already done, but and have it disconnected during the entirety of the install. But I have my relay here. It has a little screw hole, so I'm just going to use the rear screw hole on my washer reservoir. That'll kind of hide the install a little bit because I want this to look semi-stock and not like super aftermarket. So I'm just going to attach that there. My ground for the relay can also just go there. So that one, I don't need to modify the wiring at all. And my signal to turn on the relay is going to go to the ballast resistor, which is also conveniently right here. So I'll just cut my wire so it's about long enough to reach the ignition here. I'll give it a better cut here. So that'll be my signal to turn on the relay. And my power, you can't see it, but it'll come from the starter down there, which is very conveniently located. And my output wire, I have the wire running to the fuel pump on the other side of the engine bay, so I'll just trace this along the firewall through this wiring loom back there to hook that up, and then that'll be it. It's a pretty simple install, guys. There's a lot of space in the Valiant's engine bay too. And actually, let me show you the starter. The starter is located just right down here. So the wiring loom is right here, so a lot of the wires can trace through there. Ballast resistor is right over there. And yeah, the starter's positive pole is just down there, so easy to hook up my red wire to for that. You could also do it from the alternator. The alternator also has a lug to take power off of, but this is a lot closer. Alright, so I kind of laid it out here how I had it in the engine bay. So this one will come for the starter. This one will go to the ballast resistor. We'll have to make a special kind of fitting for this. This one will go to the pump, and that one will go to the ground. We don't have to do anything with it because it already has a little eyelet. Alright, let's start with the ballast resistor part of the connection because that's the toughest one. So I don't want to cut into the factory wiring because then you have to mend that if you ever want to have it be original. So what we're going to do is just take 2 spade connectors, one female, one male. I have 2 here. They're different brands, but it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to cut a little length of wire, connect them together, and then we're going to create a T here that will supply our ignition signal, our signal to the relay. So let's get started here. All right. Now, if you don't have any special tools, what you could do is put your signal wire and crimp it into one of these so that it kind of forms like a, I don't know, like a little railroad switch kind of shape. But I actually have something that'll do the job a little bit more elegantly. I actually have this little kit that does tees and wiring. The way it works is that you clamp this around whatever your wire is, and you have a little blade connector, and you just push that in, and then that will do it. Start by clipping this together. And this is our little stent piece. So let's go back to the main harness here. To ballast this part, let's strip the wire. Let's try 10 gauge. Okay. Put this in. Alright, there we go. Then we'll plug these together. And then, there we go. So we'll just insert this in between the ballast resistor and the 12 volt signal from the key, and that will tell our relay when to turn on and off. Now for the section that goes to the starter, we could just use regular eyelets, but I have these heavier duty, thicker copper ones. They don't quite crimp on, but you can kind of just press them on. So let's send this through. And I like to bend the wire around a little bit just so it has a little more holding it on. And then we'll crush this. So I have these terminals in different sizes. You could just kind of size it to what the starter lug looks like, more or less. And if any of these wires ever fail from corrosion or something, it's all pretty easily accessible, so I'm not too worried about it. You can fix it fairly easily, strip off the wire and redo it. It's pretty much our harness. This section we'll have to connect it once we're in the car, but this is all we can do on the bench for now. Alright, I skipped over a few steps, but it's pretty simple stuff. Basically, I screwed this in, attached the ground here. Here's my little special lead that I have for the ballast resistor that turns on our relay. And then the other two wires got routed through here. This one dips down and goes onto the positive stud on the starter, the larger one usually. And then this one, I just joined it to the other wire that goes all the way down to the fuel pump, and I should actually route this through here a little bit better. Well, maybe I'll do that later, but basically, yeah, that's it. All right, now let's try and take out the mechanical fuel pump. So on the Slant 6, the fuel pump is buried way down beside the engine block, and there's just a couple bolts. There's one on that side and one on the other side. You probably won't be able to see much, but I'll rip those bolts out and then we'll pull the fuel pump. And then we just have to make a cover plate, and that's pretty much it. All right, and we're out. Haha. Got some oil dripping out. Alright, here's our fuel pump. Let's bring it back into the shop. Alright, at this stage, depending on your situation, you may or may not need the fuel pump anymore. So we need to make a cover plate. I have my lifetime supply of steel from the tiny house build still. And I have a piece here. It doesn't really matter how thick it is. It just covers up a hole basically. So you could use the fuel pump itself to trace the hole, but I actually have a gasket from a gasket kit that is for a Slant 6. So I'll just trace this, the outside and where the holes are, and we'll cut it out with an angle grinder, drill the holes, and that'll be it. But this is a little easier doing it with the gasket rather than the pump itself, yeah. So for the holes, just try to find a drill bit that is about the right size. This 3/8 drill bit is a little bit too small, but I don't have a lot of options around that size. So I might drill it, and if the bolts won't fit through, I'll ream it out. Alrighty, I'm running out of daylight, so I skipped again here forward a few steps. I finished up doing the machining and smoothing this out a little bit, mostly just like a little bit of elbow grease to get that done. And I did have to ream the holes out a little bit. If you have the proper size drill bit, you probably don't need to do that. Now another thing too to keep in mind is that because this cover plate is thinner than the mechanical fuel pump, throw a few washers on there in order to not bottom out the bolts, because they do bottom out. So right now I'm just going to put some sealant on the other side of this, let that tack up, and then we'll install it. Alright, my sealant is tacked up, so let's see if we can get this thing installed here. there's our plate installed so that we don't have an oil leak from there. And you don't need to put them super tight, just tight. It's not holding on a moving pump, so just tight enough that it doesn't fall off, basically. All right, let's see if she'll start. Sounds pretty good. Alright, so that's going to be it for this video, showing you guys the electrical install and the finishing touches on the electric fuel pump install. Now, I'm going to have to do a little bit of extra tune-up because I also had the distributor pulled for about a month and I have to tune it up and make sure it's in the right position and stuff. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe to see more such content on the Valiant and other things. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Bye.